Time now for a closer look with someone who knows his way around the financial world. The Phones for You founder, billionaire businessman and former Conservative donor, John Caudwell. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Yeah, good morning. A pleasure.
Let's just clarify status at the moment. Are you currently a Conservative donor, planning on being a Conservative donor, going to give money to another party? What's the situation?
Well, I was a Conservative donor as a one-off. I've been campaigning with Boris Johnson and Rishi over the last 3 years for something that I call Caudwell Pandemic Recovery, which was all aimed at making Britain prosperous over the next 10 to 20 years. And also, as a consequence of some components of that, helping to save the planet and the environment. Unfortunately, nothing of this has been taken up. And it's so crystal clear to me that it's the only way of prosperity for Britain, and we're not doing it. So I am extremely disappointed in the Conservative Party performance at the moment. I don't know who I would support in the next election, because what I am interested in is who will do what's right for Britain. And at the moment, that's a tough choice.
I mean, are you getting a better reception with the opposition parties? Are they taking up any of your ideas?
Well, I think Labour are very, very open-minded about a lot of things and working with business people. So I think they're very open-minded about it, much more so maybe than the Conservative Party. But the trouble is, a lot of Labour policies I disagree with. I think a lot of them may bring difficulty to the UK economy. So I have very mixed feelings at the moment. I just wish for a party that does the right things, and somebody that would adopt component parts of Caudwell Pandemic Recovery, I would be very supportive of. Now, it doesn't matter about using my name in that. That's a bit of an irrelevance. I just called it CPR because it was the way of saving the economy in March 2020 when this pandemic hit. But the big component part of that I'm absolutely passionate about is to allocate some land, maybe up to 20,000 acres, and call it an enterprise zone, and try and attract businesses from all over the world that have got environmental friendly technologies, and give them special tax concessions to bring their business to UK shores and help grow our economy, but also to help save our planet.
It's interesting. One of the things in the papers today ahead of the budget is that Rishi Sunak is actually going to revive an idea that Liz Truss had of investment zones. Is that the same as what you would like to see?
Not really, no. Mine's much bolder than that, and it's specifically about the environment, because if you look to the future, where is the growth going to be? It's going to be in environmental technologies. Other areas as well, of course, but environment technologies are going to be an absolute massive winner in the future, because it's going to become increasingly clear, as already has been, how much danger this planet is in the future. So all things that are environmental are going to just gather increasing importance year by year. And if we're at the forefront of that, we can be to the environment what Silicon Valley is to technology. And that's what we need to do. And in doing so, we grow the prosperity of Britain. We're then able to invest more in the health service, more in people's lives that are at the bottom end of the pay scale and who are struggling to survive. We can help everybody and encourage the rich still to be prosperous and do well.
What about the big question? I mean, it's suggested that the Chancellor got £23 billion more than he thought. Apparently, the Office of Budget Responsibility is going to say the headroom is probably, for the budget, is more like £5 billion. Where do you stand on tax cuts? A pretty concerted suggestion that the planned increases in corporation tax shouldn't go ahead, for example. Do you agree with that?
Well, I don't necessarily agree with having a reduction or a freezing of corporation taxes. What I do think, and it makes complete and utter logical sense to me, is that we maybe have a two-tier corporation tax system in the UK, one for businesses that are seen to be benefiting the UK economy and benefiting humanity in general, and another corporation tax for businesses that are potentially doing damage. Just for an example of what they might be, the ones that may suffer very, very high rates of corporation tax might be online gambling companies, tobacco, e-cigarettes, alcohol. Now, people will say, well, they're already taxed heavily, but they are taxed heavily to the end user. But what about the corporation tax? Is it sensible and a good idea to have a differential corporation tax according to the way a business is assessed in their contribution to society?
And how do you, or perhaps you don't, get your ideas fed into government? Because we've had various business councils that have been set up and abandoned. I mean, do you get the sense that someone like you, someone who's contributed a great deal to the economy, building up a very successful company, do you get the sense that you do have the ear of anyone in government?
Not really, no. I campaigned with Boris. I had Boris's ear for a short while. I had a conversation or two with Rishi. I think my ideas are a bit too challenging for them, and they always focus, and I'm not just talking about the Conservative Party here, I'm talking about politicians in general. They always focus on what can I do to win the election in 4 years' time. Nobody seems to focus on how do we make Britain great? How do we keep Britain great? How do we create long-term, sustainable profitability and GDP growth for the poorer people of Britain so that we have the ability to make society fairer and better? And they just don't do it. And it's a huge, huge disappointment to me. More than just a disappointment, it's a huge frustration, because the enterprise zone I've just been talking about for the environment is an absolute no-brainer, could not have been done without Brexit. And yet all of the opportunities that we had as a result of Brexit, we've not prospered out of. We've not used any of those opportunities. All we've done is had the negatives of Brexit, which there were always going to be, and none of the huge prosperity that could come through long-term thinking like this, where we have what Europe would say is an unfair and unlevel playing field. But we are competitors of the whole world, including Europe, and we need to go out there and make this happen.
John, it's Kate here. You must speak to lots of other big business owners and founders like yourself. I'm interested when I'm listening to you speak. I can sense your frustration with the Conservative Party. I can feel your frustration with the fact that you don't believe they've capitalised on Brexit and that they don't have long-term big ideas for the economy. How many other business people in this country do you think feel the same way? Because that's often a good indicator about whether support may well shift to a different party ahead of an election.
Oh, I think there's a lot of frustration with the Conservative Party, huge frustration. But there's also huge fear about the Labour Party. So it's a very interesting dynamic at the moment, because there is this huge frustration. There's this fear that the Tory party are not going to drive things in the direction that will make Britain prosperous. And of course, we know they've been in a huge mess. That said, we do have to recognise, of course, that the pandemic threw everybody off course. The pandemic was a complete catastrophe for everybody, notwithstanding, of course, the lives that were sadly lost. But just from a point of view of managing your lives and managing the economy, it was a complete catastrophe. So the Tories have had a real poison chalice with that one anyway, but it didn't stop them, or should not have stopped them, looking at things like Caudwell pandemic recovery, like this enterprise zone for technological investment in environmental technologies. It should not have stopped them doing that, but they're really so focused on getting into power next time. And this is just true of all political parties, and I find it more and more frustrating by the year.
And how did you, I mean, you mentioned the pandemic there. How have you felt reading some of the text back and forth between the Health Secretary, the Prime Minister at the time, key advisors during the pandemic? How do you feel now that you've seen it revealed in the Telegraph newspaper, that it was handled behind the scenes?
Yeah, I must admit that I'm not knowledgeable on them. I haven't had time to catch up. I'm busy looking after two children at the moment. My wife's being a daddy at the moment, full-time daddy, because Modesta's in Monaco expecting our new daughter. So I'm not familiar. But what I would say is that I think it is in the public interest that these texts are explored, but I do worry about somebody who signs an NDA and then, in my opinion, sells the content that they gained as a result of that NDA to the newspapers. Now, we don't know she sold it, but I've seen an interview on Times Radio where she's very defensive about it. She's a powerful, strong woman, and I can admire her for a clear-headed thinking and so on. But I don't really agree with behaviour that I consider unethical, even possibly if that is in the public interest, because a confidentiality agreement is exactly that and should not really be broken.
Mr. Caudwell, before you go, we've talked about growth, we've talked about green issues, the environment. Those are two of the missions of Keir Starmer. I'm just wondering if you could ever see yourself voting for the Labour Party.
What I would say is that I will support any party that I believe will make Britain great, will implement some of the ideas that I've had, not because they're my ideas, but because they will work. They will help to grow Britain. And if we grow Britain's GDP, it makes Britain a stronger and gives us the ability to be a fairer society and look after all those poor people at the bottom end of the chain that are suffering enormously and always suffer.
So, as canvassers would say, we'll put you down as a won't say.
Well, I think I am saying, because we'll see what the Labour Party come up with and we'll see what the Conservatives come up with.
John, have Keir Starmer or his team reached out to you at all?
Yes, they have.
So you're talking to them at the moment, are you?
I will, yeah, I am, and I'll talk to anybody that I believe will implement the right policies for Britain, do the right things and make Britain great again. And we've been in the doldrums for some time now, and it makes me extremely disappointed as a patriotic British man. It makes me extremely disappointed when I see a combination of poor behaviour, poor management, lack of vision. And I just desperately want the right party in power to drive this forward. And I offered my services to the Conservative Party on many occasions over the last 3 years because I believed I could add tremendous value to them in opening their mindset up to what they should do for the future, how they should create prosperity in the same way that I did in my group of companies. And it's all there to be done and can be done. We just need a party with vision and the determination to drive it through.
Well, it sounds like, John, the Labour Party are taking advantage of that vision. Thank you so much, John Caudwell, for joining us this morning, and congratulations ahead of your new arrival.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.